In this video, I will show you how to create a DHCP scope. To do so, in the Server Manager, go open the Tools menu. Then click on DHCP. The DHCP Manager will be displayed. Let's enlarge this panel first. At the left side of the window, you have the DHCP's server name. And just below, there is the IPv4 node, where you define the IPv4 version scope. There is also the IPv6 node to use on version 6 IP networks. In this course, we are just going to focus on IPv4 networks. So, to create a DHCP scope, right-click on IPv4 node to display the context menu, and click on New Scope. A wizard is displayed. The first page is just a welcome page. Just click Next. In this page, you are prompted to enter a name for your DHCP scope. For example, I will name my scope Zintec LAN. You can also add a description. I will just let this field empty and click Next. On the next page, you have to specify the IP range. Our starting IP address is 10.10.10.2, and the ending IP address is 10.10.10.254. You need also to specify the subnet mask, either by entering the mask length 24, which is equivalent of the 255.255.255.0 subnet mask. Now click Next. The next page allows you to add exclusions. Exclusions are a range of addresses that are not distributed by the DHCP server. I will type the starting IP of my excluded range, which is 10.10.10.2. The end IP address is 10.10.10.40. Click Add button to confirm. Here I have just added one excluded IP range. You can add more than one, depending on your network architecture and your needs. Click Next to continue. On this page, you can specify the lease duration. It determines how long a client has an IP address before it returns to the lease pool. By default, it's 8 days. I will keep the default value and click Next. On the Configuration DHCP Options page, select I want to configure these options now. This will allow you to configure the default gateway, DNS servers, and WINS settings for that scope. The first option to configure is the default gateway. I will enter the IP address of my gateway, 10.10.10.1, and click on the Add button. I click Next. On the domain name and DNS servers page, you specify the parent domain name you want the client computers on your network to use for DNS name resolution. The parent domain is corp.zintec.com. This information is retrieved from the DNS server. If you remember, when we added Active Directory services on this server, we also installed the DNS service and created the corp.zintec.com domain. Besides the parent domain, you have to specify the DNS server's IP addresses assigned to the client devices. By default, the DHCP server offers us the DNS server's IPs it uses. The first IP address is DHCP server's IP. This is because the DHCP server hosts also the DNS role. The second IP represents the Google DNS server. The scope wizard program retrieved those IP addresses from the local server network interface. Remember that we have added the DHCP role to the domain controller server, that is also the DNS server. When we set the network settings up for this server, we have assigned two IPs for the DNS servers. But let's open a command prompt to see that. I will type ipconfig/all. Here we have the local host IP address, which is equivalent to 10.10.10.10 IP address, and the Google DNS server IP address. Okay? So here I am just going to delete the Google DNS IP and only keep the local DNS IP address. This is because I don't want my local devices asks the Google DNS server to resolve internal domain names. To be more explicit, let's take this situation. A computer on your local network wants to access your local web server. Let's name it web.corp.zintech.com. This computer will try first to query the local DNS with the IP 10.10.10.10. If this DNS server is not available to answer the client's query for any reason, the client's device will try to send the same query to the second DNS server, which is in this case the Google DNS server. Of course, Google's DNS servers are not aware of your local network and thus can't answer back. This is why you need at least two DNS servers in your network for failover purpose. I click Next. Windows Internet Name Service, or WINS, is a legacy computer name registration and resolution service that maps computer net BIOS name to IP addresses. They are not used in modern networks and have been replaced by DNS servers. So I will keep this page blank and click Next. In this page, you are asked if you want to activate this scope. So choose Yes, I want to activate this scope now, and click Next. Finally, click Finish. Now you can see the scope I just created being added under the IPv4 node. One more action has to be done before your DHCP starts assigning IP addresses. You have to authorize your DHCP server in the Active Directory, otherwise it stays disabled. At the IPv4 node, you can see this small red arrow. This means that your DHCP server, even configured, stays disabled. At the right side, you can read the explanation and the instructions for authorizing the DHCP server. So to authorize this DHCP server, navigate to the server node and on the action menu, click Authorize. This is what I am going to do right now. I refresh the view to see if there is any changes. Yes, you can see that the IPv4 node color has now changed to green. The DHCP server is now authorized and fully operational, and the scope we just created is active.